Ladies and gentlemen, saints of God, I need you to open your hearts and your minds right now, because what I'm about to say will stir your spirit and lift your soul. Can I get an amen? I want you to take a deep breath. Release all the stress, the worries, the fears that have been weighing you down. And hear me when I say this: rest now. God is making a way out of no way. Somebody needs to hear this today, because what looks impossible, what looks hopeless, what looks like the end of the road is about to turn into a divine miracle. Yes, I said it. A miracle when doors have slammed in your face, when bills are stacking up, when the dreams you've held on to seem so far out of reach. God is not finished. He is not done with you. He is not just turning things around. He is creating a way where there seems to be no way. So I want you to sit up, lift your hands, lift your eyes, and open your heart, because tonight your faith is going to rise, your hope is going to explode, and your life is about to witness the supernatural power of God. You don't have to fight alone. You don't have to struggle alone. God is already working behind the scenes, orchestrating a breakthrough, making a way out of no way, and giving you a rest that only He can provide. If you believe it, if you receive it, if you open your heart and say, "Lord, I trust you," then prepare yourself, saints, because what God is about to do will make every struggle, every tear, every sleepless night worth it. This is your time. Your miracle is coming. Your way is being made. And tonight you can finally rest, because God has got this. Sometimes in life we look at our circumstances and we wonder, God, why is this taking so long? Why am I still waiting? And I want you to hear me clearly today. Your waiting does not mean God is absent. Your waiting does not mean God has forgotten you. Your waiting does not mean the door has closed. Oh no, saints. The waiting is a sign that God is at work orchestrating something so much greater than you can imagine. You see, God's timing is perfect. It is flawless. It is beyond human comprehension. Just because your timeline does not match your vision does not mean the vision is gone. You see, the enemy loves to make you feel discouraged during the delay. The enemy loves to whisper in your ear that God has forgotten about you, that you're out of options, that your dream is dead. But I am here to tell you those are lies. Those are nothing but distractions. While you are wondering and worrying, God is moving. While you are pacing and stressing, God is arranging. While you are doubting and questioning, God is perfecting. Think about the story of Abraham. God told Abraham he would be a father, but he had to wait decades before Isaac was born. Can you imagine waiting that long? Most of us would have given up. Most of us would have said, "Lord, I don't see it. I don't understand it. I'm going to take matters into my own hands." But God's timing was perfect. The delay was not denial. The delay was preparation. Every year, every season of waiting, every moment of anticipation was molding Abraham, testing his faith, and perfecting the promise. And I want you to know something else. Your delay may be a preparation for promotion. Sometimes what we think is a setback is actually a setup. Sometimes what we perceive as lost time is actually God creating space for something bigger, something stronger, something more enduring than we could have planned ourselves. You see, God doesn't operate in haste like we do. He is not rushed by our calendars or our schedules. He is never late. He is never early. He is always right on time, perfectly aligned with what is best for us. Now, I know waiting can be hard. I know it can feel lonely. I know it can feel like everyone else is moving forward while you're standing still. I know it can feel like the world is passing you by while your prayers seem to echo in the silence. But here is the truth. God's timing is intentional. Every delay is deliberate. Every pause is purposeful. Every moment of waiting is a chance for you to strengthen your faith, deepen your trust, and refine your character. Look at Joseph in the Bible, sold by his brothers, falsely accused, thrown into prison. It must have felt like a nightmare, but God's timing was perfect. Every hardship, every trial, every moment of waiting was shaping Joseph for a destiny far greater than he could have imagined. The delay prepared him for the position of power where he could save nations from famine. Saints, your waiting is not wasted. Your waiting is working. God is using every setback, every roadblock, every no to set you up for the ultimate yes. And here's another thing. When God's timing finally arrives, it will be more than just enough. It will exceed your expectations. It will surpass your understanding because God does not operate in the economy of man. He operates in the realm of the miraculous. While you are waiting, God is moving behind the scenes, arranging the pieces, aligning the stars, orchestrating the circumstances, and ensuring that when the time comes, everything falls perfectly into place. It is not random. It is not coincidence. It is divine design. I want you to hear me. Your impatience will never speed up God's plan. Your worry will never change God's timing. Your frustration cannot accelerate the promise, but your faith, your patience, your trust, those are the keys that allow you to walk through the delay with peace, knowing that God's timing is perfect. Learn to rest in Him. Learn to wait without anxiety, clears throat. Learn to believe that what God has promised, He is able to perform. Sometimes we want instant results. We want overnight breakthroughs. We want immediate answers. But God's timing often comes in ways we do not expect. Sometimes the answer comes in a whisper. Sometimes in a closed door, sometimes in a delay that seems painful, sometimes in circumstances that don't make sense to the human eye. But when it comes, it will be glorious. It will be worth the wait. It will be exactly what you needed at the exact time you needed it. That is the perfection of God's timing. And saints, the beauty of God's timing is that it also teaches us reliance. It teaches us to depend not on our understanding, not on our strength, not on our schedule, but on Him. Because when we trust God's timing, we step into a peace that the world cannot give, a confidence that no obstacle can shake, and a hope that cannot be extinguished. Waiting becomes not a burden, but a blessing. Delay becomes not frustration, but preparation. Time becomes not an enemy, but a tool in the hands of the Almighty. So if you are in a season of waiting today, listen to me carefully. Don't quit. Don't give up. Don't try to force what God is orchestrating. Rest in Him. Trust in Him. Know that every delay has a purpose. Every pause has a reason. And every moment of waiting is a stepping stone to the miracle that is coming. God's timing is perfect, saints. Even when it feels delayed, even when you can't see the way forward, even when you feel like the night will never end, the dawn is coming, the breakthrough is coming, the way out of now way is coming. And when it comes, you will stand amazed. You will look back and say, Lord, I see it now. I see the reason for the wait. I see the purpose in the pause. I see your hand at work all along. And that moment, that divine intersection of faith and fulfillment will remind you that God's timing is not just perfect. It is miraculous, it is sovereign, and it is full of love for you. So rest now, trust Him, wait on Him because His timing is perfect. Your miracle is on the way, and nothing can stop the God who is making a way out of now way. So many of us have a misunderstanding about rest. We think rest means doing nothing, lying around, being idle, or checking out a life. But let me tell you something, saints. Rest is not inactivity. Rest is not laziness. Rest is not giving up. Rest is not letting life pass you by. No, true rest is an act of faith. It is a deliberate choice to trust God's process even when you don't see the whole picture. Rest is a spiritual discipline that says, Lord, I may not understand it, but I believe you. I may not see it, but I trust you. I may not feel it, but I know you are working it out. You see, in our fast-paced world, we are constantly taught that we must hustle, we must grind, we must push, we must fight, we must earn every blessing. And while hard work is good, saints, there comes a time when God says, stop, rest, trust me. Sometimes He allows you to pause because He is doing something in the background that you cannot do for yourself. And that is where most of us miss it. We see the pause, we see the delay, and we panic. We fill the silence with anxiety. We try to force the outcome because we think rest is doing nothing, when in reality, rest is fully engaging with God's process. Look at the story of Elijah after the Mount Carmel showdown. He had just witnessed God's power, called fire down from heaven, and defeated the prophets of Baal. You would think he would be on top of the world, riding a wave of victory. But no, Elijah ran. He ran into the wilderness, exhausted, discouraged, and afraid. He laid down under that broom tree and prayed that God would take his life. That moment looked like inactivity, but God told Elijah, rest, eat, recharge. I have more work for you. Rest, saints, was not a break from purpose. Rest was not a withdrawal from the mission. Rest was trusting God to renew him, to prepare him for the next assignment, and to restore his strength for the work ahead. Rest is also a recognition that God's process is perfect. There is a divine rhythm to life, a spiritual flow that we cannot control with our human hands. When we try to force things, when we try to rush the timing, when we try to manufacture results, we often miss the fullness of God's blessing. But when we rest, we acknowledge that God's ways are higher than our ways. His timing is better than our timing. His plan is greater than our plan. And resting in him allows the divine process to unfold without interference. It allows God to move in ways that are beyond our comprehension. Saints, rest is not passive. It is active trust. It is the decision to stop striving and start relying. It is the act of surrendering control and letting God guide the steps. While your hands are quiet, God is at work. While your mind may feel still, God is orchestrating. While your body may be resting, your purpose is moving forward in the unseen. That is the beauty of spiritual rest. It is rest with purpose, rest with faith, rest with expectation. Think about David hiding in the wilderness while being pursued by Saul. On the outside, it looked like he was doing nothing. He was waiting, hiding, lying low, and biding his time. But what was actually happening? God was shaping David. God was developing his leadership, refining his character, and preparing him for kingship. That time of rest in the wilderness was far from idle. It was a season of preparation, a time to build trust, a time to align with God's process so that when David finally stepped into his destiny, he was ready. And here's another truth. Resting in God's process protects your spirit. When we try to force outcomes, we often wear ourselves down emotionally, mentally, and physically. We become frustrated, anxious, and drained. But when we learn to rest in God's process, we conserve our strength, we maintain peace, and we position ourselves to receive the breakthrough when it comes. Rest is like a spiritual investment. You are not wasting time. You are earning the dividends of peace, patience, and readiness. Many times we think we must do everything ourselves. We carry burdens that God never intended for us to carry alone. We exhaust ourselves trying to solve problems, fix situations, and control outcomes. But the truth is, saints, God's process works best when we step back and allow him to move. Resting is not giving up. It is giving God the space to work on your behalf. Snorts. It is saying, Lord, I can't see the way, but I trust that you are making the way. I can't figure it out, but I believe that you have the answer. I don't have the power, but I know that you are mighty to save. That is rest. That is trust. That is faith in motion. Even Jesus modeled this principle. After days of teaching, healing, and ministering to the multitudes, he often withdrew to solitary places to pray. He rested, he refocused, he recharged. And in those moments of rest, he connected with the Father, received direction, and renewed his strength for the next phase of his ministry. Saints, if the Son of God himself rested, how much more do we need to rest in God's process? It is not a suggestion. It is a command, a strategy, and a necessity for a fruitful life. Resting in God's process also keeps our hearts aligned with his will. When we rush, we often make mistakes, overlook details, or settle for less than God's best. But when we rest, we maintain clarity, discernment, and alignment with his purpose. We are able to hear his voice, recognize his timing, and embrace the opportunities he places before us. Rest sharpens us spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, preparing us for the assignment God has designed just for us. So saints, if you are in a season where you feel like nothing is happening, I want you to know that rest is working on your behalf. Rest is not passive waiting. Rest is active trust. Rest is surrendering control. Rest is connecting with God's process and believing that He is working even when you cannot see it. Your breakthrough, your miracle, your promotion, your healing, it is being prepared while you rest. I want you to hear me clearly. Resting in God's process is not giving up. It is not quitting. It is not delay. It is divine strategy. It is positioning yourself for the moment when God will move in power, in glory, and in victory. It is choosing peace over panic, trust over anxiety, faith over frustration, and patience over pressure. So take your hands off. Stop trying to force what God is orchestrating. Stop worrying about the outcome. Stop doubting the process. Rest, trust, believe, know that the God who promised is faithful. The God who called you is working. The God who loves you is making a way out of no way. And while you rest, His process is moving. His plan is unfolding, and His timing is perfect. Rest, saints. Rest in the power of God. Rest in the purpose of God. Rest in the process of God. Because when you learn to rest, not as inactivity, but as trust, you will walk into the fullness of what God has prepared for you, stronger, wiser, and ready to receive the miracle that is already on its way. There are moments in life when we look at our circumstances and we say, Lord, this is impossible. I can't see a way. The odds are against me. The mountain is too high. The storm is too strong. The debt is too big. The problem is too complicated. And I want you to hear me today, saints. What seems impossible to man is the perfect opportunity for God to show His power. That's right. When you feel like you have no options, no resources, no solutions, God sees the opening for His glory to be revealed. You see, the human mind is limited. Our eyes can only see what is in front of us. Our experience can only carry us so far. Our strength can only stretch to a certain point. But God's power is unlimited. His wisdom is infinite. His creativity has no bounds. And when a situation looks impossible from a human perspective, it is exactly when God decides to step in and make the impossible possible. That is the nature of the Almighty. Think about the story of Moses. He was called to lead a nation of millions out of slavery in Egypt. On the human side, it was impossible. How could one man stand against Pharaoh, who had armies, wealth, and power? How could one man guide an entire nation across deserts and rivers without resources, without supplies, without certainty? And yet God saw it differently. God saw the opportunity for His power to be displayed. He parted the Red Sea. He sent plagues that no man could control. He made a way where there was no way. Saints, what seems impossible to you is just God waiting to intervene. Let me tell you something else. Impossible situations are actually a sign that God is about to move in ways you cannot even imagine. The bigger the problem, the greater the glory. The stronger the opposition, the louder the miracle. The higher the mountain, the more dramatic the breakthrough. God is never intimidated by impossibilities. He is never threatened by obstacles. He is never slowed down by challenges. In fact, it is in the impossibilities that He shows up the most. That is why David, facing Goliath, said, "You come to me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord Almighty." David saw Goliath not as a problem, but as an opportunity for God to show His power. And God delivered in a way that no man could have done. Saints, the same principle applies to your life today. You may be looking at bills you cannot pay. You may be looking at relationships that seem broken beyond repair. You may be looking at health challenges, career obstacles, or dreams that seem unattainable. But I want you to understand God is not limited by your impossibilities. He is not bound by your circumstances. He is not constrained by your doubts. The situation you think is hopeless is exactly where God wants to demonstrate His glory. And here is the key. When you face the impossible, your response matters. Do you respond with fear, frustration, and defeat? Or do you respond with faith, hope, and expectancy? The impossible requires more than human effort. It requires divine intervention. It requires surrendering to God's power rather than leaning on your own understanding. It requires saying, Lord, I don't see the way, but I trust you. I don't know how it will happen, but I believe you. I can't do this on my own, but I know you can. That is when the impossible becomes possible. That is when mountains move. That is when chains break. That is when the miracle manifests. Look at the story of the widow with the oil in 2 Kings 4. She had a debt she could not pay. Her children's lives were at stake. She had nothing, not one resource, not one plan, not one solution. But the prophet told her to trust God and use what little she had. And God multiplied her oil beyond measure, providing enough to pay the debt and save her family. What seemed impossible to her became the stage for God's miraculous power. Saints, your impossibilities are the canvas on which God paints his miracles. Impossible situations also teach us to rely fully on God. When things are easy, it's tempting to lean on our own strength, our own skills, our own understanding. But when things are impossible, we have no choice but to turn to him. And that is where faith grows, where trust deepens, and where the supernatural is released. Impossible situations strip us of self-sufficiency and remind us that we are dependent on God. And that dependency is not a weakness. It is where his power is made perfect. Even Jesus himself demonstrated this principle. Think about the story of Lazarus. Lazarus had been dead for 4 days, and the tomb was sealed. From a human perspective, resurrection was impossible. There was no hope. There was no solution. But Jesus saw it differently. He saw the opportunity for God's glory to be revealed. He called Lazarus forth, and life came forth from death. Saints, that is what God does with the impossible in your life. He turns death into life, lack into abundance, weakness into strength, defeat into victory. And here's something I need you to hear. The impossible is often a setup for promotion. Sometimes God allows situations to appear hopeless because he is positioning you for something greater. Sometimes the impossibility is not a problem. It is a platform. Sometimes it is not a threat. It is a throne. What looks like a dead end is actually a divine entrance into breakthrough, blessing, and favor. That is why Paul said in 2 Corinthians 12 that God's power is made perfect in weakness. The impossible situations reveal the strength of God in our lives, showing the world that it is not by might nor by power, but by his Spirit. Saints, when you feel the weight of the impossible, I want you to stop focusing on the problem and start focusing on the God who is greater than the problem. Stop worrying about the odds and start praising the one who defies the odds. Stop stressing about the challenge and start trusting the one who specializes in miracles. The impossible is not the end of your story. It is the introduction to your testimony. It is the opportunity for God to demonstrate his power in ways that leave people amazed, inspired, and transformed. So I want you to hear me today. Do not be afraid of the impossible. Do not shrink back from it. Do not lose faith when it looks like nothing is working. The impossible is God's invitation to show his power, to move on your behalf, and to turn your situation into a miracle. It is the stage where your faith meets his glory. It is the moment where your hope becomes reality. It is the time where your breakthrough is birthed. And when it happens, when God moves in that impossible situation, you will stand in awe. You will look back and say, Lord, I see it now. I see your hand. I see your power. I see your glory. The impossible will become testimony. The impossible will become praise. The impossible will become the evidence that God is real, God is faithful, and God is powerful.